I seek refuge in Allah, the all-hearing, the all-knowing, from the accursed Satan, the deceitful, the rejected, in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, and the best of prayers and purest of salutations be upon the master of the prophets and the seal of the messengers, the beloved of the Lord of the worlds, Abul Qasim Muhammad. O Allah, send blessings upon Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. May Allah bless him and his pure and immaculate family. Allah, send blessings upon Muhammad and the family of Muhammad among the first, and send blessings upon Muhammad and the family of Muhammad among the last, and send blessings upon Muhammad and the family of Muhammad in the highest assembly. We begin on this blessed day with the book Aqaid al-Imamiyya, the beliefs of the Imami Shia. And before we delve into the topics of this book, it is very important to present an introduction in which we discuss the author and the authorship. The author is Sheikh Muhammad Rida al-Muzaffar. May Allah's absolute mercy be upon him. Of course, we will not be able to present and elaborate on his biography in reality because his life is filled with many events, and books have been authored about that. Whoever wants to know the personal information about Sheikh al-Muzaffar can read the introduction of the book, the introduction to Aqaid al-Imamiyya. Most editions contain a sufficient and comprehensive translation biography of Sheikh al-Muzaffar. May Allah's absolute mercy be upon him. Among the most important of them is the translation written by Sheikh Muhammad Mahdi al-Sifi, meaning perhaps one of the most important things written on the translation of Sheikh al-Muzaffar. No, we want to touch upon points and characteristics in the personality of al-Muzaffar that give value to his scholarly output, meaning the matters associated with what will issue from him. The first trait in this man, and it is written on all the covers of his books, is that he is a jurist and mujtahid. Muhammad Rida al-Muzaffar was not an ordinary scholar or a student of knowledge. Rather, he was one of the senior jurists of the sect, and not an ordinary mujtahid in the conventional sense, but rather an all-encompassing scholar of both transmitted naqli and rational aqli sciences. Therefore, we find that he wrote in jurisprudence, philosophy, logic, and in all sciences. The value of jurisprudence and ijtihad stands out here when a jurist writes about beliefs. The matter is different if a student of knowledge, a researcher, or an ordinary intellectual writes it. No. When the writer is a jurist of a high caliber, encompassing both rational and transmitted sciences, his output will be different from others, especially in beliefs. And if we conduct a process of induction of the belief books available to us, meaning the heritage, the Shiite belief heritage, few are the books authored by jurists. Perhaps the percentage of books authored by jurists in beliefs does not reach 10%. Therefore, herein lies the value of a jurist at the level of Muhammad Rida al-Muzaffar. May Allah's absolute mercy be upon him, taking it upon himself to write and author a text on beliefs. This is the first feature. The second feature, Sheikh al-Muzaffar in the history of the Hawza Ilmiya Shiite seminary, was not a transient figure, meaning an ordinary person, a mere number, a mere name. No, Sheikh al-Muzaffar was a reformer and a renewer. The man in the history of the Hawza Ilmiya is considered one of the most important pillars of renewal and reform, and the project of Sheikh Muhammad Rida al-Muzaffar. In reality, when we read all that has been issued by him of books, of writings, of, for example, some articles, some meetings, all of them revolve around developing and advancing the Shiite condition. We are talking about the first half of the 20th century. At that time, when the Enlightenment movement began in the Arab and Islamic world, among the pioneers of this movement, the reform movement within the Shiite interior, was Sheikh Muhammad Rida al-Muzaffar. Among his deeds, or one of the most important things he did, was institutionalizing the Hawza. Therefore, he founded the publishing forum Muntada and Nashr, and founded the College of Fiqh in Nayaf, and it was the first college to teach seminary sciences. The first class or the first generation who graduated from this college are practically the most important personalities that we know. For example, in terms of a public figure, Sheikh Ahmad al-Wale, I graduated from this college, and others, and others. And others, most of the active personalities in the Shiite world in the late periods of the 20th century are graduates of this institution. The man actually exerted great efforts in this aspect. In addition to that, he proceeded to renew the seminary curricula. He wanted to reformulate the books taught in the seminary in a style and a new method. Therefore, he wrote a book on Usul al-Fiqh, Principles of Jurisprudence in a New Style. And this book began to be taught in the Hausa under the title Usul al-Muzaffar. He wrote a book on logic, and also this book began to be taught in the Hausa. He wrote on philosophy, and he wrote on beliefs. This book, which today is also a seminary text, the book Aqaid Alamiya. So the specificity and the second feature in this man is that he was a renewing reformer who shouldered the concern of development, change and elevation of the Shiite condition. Therefore, the books issued by him are not merely a book, but rather a link within his reform project. The third matter also, this is a matter credited to al-Muzaffar. Al-Muzaffar was not secluded in Najaf, meaning a person living in Najaf and isolated from the rest of the world. No, the man was closely connected to the outside world, open to the Islamic world, having dialogues, discussions, and correspondence, and carrying the concern of approximation and unity among Muslims. And every letter he wrote in his various books, he is not only addressing the Shiite interior, but he is also viewing the other. Even the creed book in our hands is not a creedal book. We will talk about this subject directed only to the Shiite interior. No, it is a creedal book with one eye on the Shiite interior, founding an authentic, pure Shiite creed, and one eye on the other, the different one, how he reads Shiism and how we can improve his view of Shiism. And this is also a feature in the writings of Sheikh al-Muzaffar. Other writings, the vast majority of them, of course, there are always exceptions, are focused on the Shiite interior only. No. Al-Muzaffar's books, we can say, are Islamic books addressing all Muslims, even though they maintain their Shiite specificity. So we have then three features in this personality who authored this book, a mujtahid jurist, a renewing reformer, and open to the other with great openness. Now we come to the author and the book in our hands, the book Aqaid al-Amamiyya. Of course, some people, when they look at the book, say it is a small book, perhaps 30, 40, or 60 pages containing an introduction. So this book is underestimated. In reality, no. This book, despite its small size and despite the small number of its pages, is a very valuable book. And we can mention 5 features in it. And every feature, we might say, and not by way of exaggeration, is missing in most of the creed books that were written before al-Muzaffar, before Aqaid al-Amamiyya by Sheikh al-Muzaffar, because after him, whoever came after him wove on his loom and began writing in the same way. The first feature of this book is that it is a textbook, meaning it is a book authored in order to be taught, in order to be a curriculum. Why is this a feature? Of course, the majority of creedal books before this book were not textbooks. They are books that either contain the opinions of their authors, meaning the author has creedal opinions he gathered in this book, or they are commentaries, explanations, or glosses on other books. The feature of a textbook is that it is organized and arranged in a methodical way that introduces information into the mind of the recipient. Usually, an ordinary book. I want to write a book gathering my opinions in it. I do not care how the other party reads the book or how I convey the book to him. But my concern is focused on documenting these opinions that I want to write. But the textbook, the lesson methodology, is intended first and foremost to make the recipient understand and to ground the recipient. Aqaid al-Amamiyya in its origin. This book was a collection of lectures delivered at the publishing forum that we mentioned a short while ago. After a period, Sheikh al-Muzaffar was asked, as we will read in the introduction, to write down and record these lectures, and then it turned into a book. So indeed, they were instructional lectures and were converted into a book for teaching. So we are before a creedal book, authored to be a textbook. This is a feature. This is first. Secondly, the second feature, the conciseness found in the book. It is a very concise book, such that a person can take a complete creedal course from the very first point, the first topic in beliefs, to the last topic in it, in a short period of time. Why is this a feature? Because other creedal books either contain a detrimental conciseness. Conciseness meaning selection, detrimental in the sense that the matters in it have a deficiency, not in the sense that when the abbreviation of the book is severe, the phrasing becomes very difficult, such that it is hard to decode. Some creedal books are like books of talismans and riddles read by a person. Another part of the books, no, they contain boring verbosity, meaning a creedal encyclopedia of, for example, 5 to 10 volumes. The first problem is that no matter how much effort you expend in this concise book, your understanding will be defective. The lengthy encyclopedias, you will spend days, nights, months, and perhaps years, and you will not finish a creedal course. This book is concise in a way that a person can take a complete creedal course in a simple period, and the man stated that this book is an introduction to advanced topics. Usually, if jurists say advanced topics, they mean Bath al-Kharaj, advanced seminary research. Sheikh al-Muzaffar launched or delivered, these lectures as a preparatory introduction for students for advanced research. Therefore, this book, although concise and brief between the folds of al-Muzaffar's speech and between its lines, is a lot of knowledge, but a person needs to have what Sheikh al-Muzaffar's keys, especially having knowledge of the intellectual and cultural background of Sheikh al-Muzaffar. We mentioned that he is a jurist, mujtahid, all-encompassing of both rational and transmitted sciences. Yes, it is very important to mention some things. For example, from the rational sciences, he is a student of Muhaqqiq al-Isfahani, Muhammad Hussein al-Isfahani, the well-known philosopher, the author of the well-known philosophical poem Tufat al-Hakim. He is considered one of his most prominent students, so he belongs to a well-known philosophical school. And these opinions are infused in this book and in others, even in the book Usul al-Fiqh. Jurisprudentially, he also has a well-known school. So if a person possesses these keys, they will find abundant knowledge in this book. Therefore, I am against belittling the book Aqaid al-Imamiyya. No, it is a book that contains depth, and this will appear from the fourth point, which is the fourth feature. And it is a feature and not a shortcoming in the book. What is it? That it is a creedal book devoid of demonstration, deduction, fay-proof, meaning that Sheikh al-Muzaffar mentioned creedal matters like jurisprudential fatwas. We believe in such and such, our belief is such and such, and rarely establishes a proof. Usually, Sheikh al-Muzaffar does not argue for a matter unless it is a controversial issue or contains a subtle point that needs clarification. Good. Why is this a feature? This gives wide space for the teacher, either to teach the book as creedal fatwas or to garnish these fatwas with some simple proofs, or for the teacher to soar high with the book by delving deeply into proofs. Therefore, this book can be explained in 20 lessons, 30 lessons, just as it can be explained in 300 lessons. It can be written as a commentary on it in one volume or two volumes like some printed commentaries. Of course, there are some commentaries on this book. One of the commentaries was written by a jurist, one of the commentaries of this book. And also, it is possible to write in its explanation 10 to 20 volumes, because al-Muzaffar wanted this book in this form to be interacted with by the person according to the recipient. This book, just as it can be taught to youth, fay children, can be taught to specialists and not just to adults. And the fifth and final point associated with this book is that it is a comprehensive book, meaning Sheikh Muzaffar was able to gather in it all the foundational beliefs of the Imami Shia, starting from Tawhid monotheism, all the way to Ma'ad, resurrection. The 5 roots of religion. Rather, he mentioned creedal matters that are not from the roots of religion, but rather details or branches of these roots, as in some matters of attributes, in some matters of infallibility, and in others. Nay, he touched upon other issues that have no relation to creed. He touched upon some jurisprudential issues. He touched upon some historical issues. He touched upon some ethical issues in this book. In reality, the book is a foundation for an authentic Imami Shiism. Although the book was named Aqaid al-Imamiyya, it gathered other matters in it that are not from beliefs. But they are very important because they, even if they are not from the roots of beliefs, are from the fundamentals of Shiism. Now, if we gather the specificities associated with the author and the specificities associated with the author of the book, we reach this conclusion that this book is important and very important. And it is no wonder then that this book today is the first creedal book taught in the Hausa. When a student of knowledge goes to the Hausa and studies beliefs, the first book he studies is this book, Aqaid al-Imamiyya. The reason is what we mentioned concerning the characteristics of the author and the characteristics of the author. So we are before a valuable opus. We read the introduction of the book and comment on it as is heard. Of course, the book contains several introductions. The publisher's introduction, and some doctors wrote an introduction to it. Dr. Ahmed, Hefni Dowd, and the author's translation. I will read 2 introductions. The first introduction by Sheikh al-Muzaffar, which was written in the year 1370, meaning how long ago? 74 years ago. 74 years ago. And the second introduction, which was written 10 years after it. We begin with the first introduction. He said, "Praise be to Allah and thanks, and prayers and peace be upon Muhammad, the best of humanity, and his family, the guides." I dictated these beliefs. A book in its beginning was lectures, and the intent from them was nothing other than recording the summary of what I had reached of understanding Islamic beliefs according to the method of the Ahl al-Bayt, peace be upon them. Here, the Takribi approximation, Fay unity and unifying spirit is clear. Understanding Islamic beliefs according to the method of the Ahl al-Bayt, peace be upon them. And I recorded these summaries stripped of evidence and proof, the matter we mentioned. Of course, if evidence and proof are mentioned, it means rational evidence, and stripped of the texts narrated from the Imams concerning them. For the most part, the transmitted evidence. Why? For what we mentioned, so that the beginner, the learner, and the scholar may benefit from it. A book that is not simple, from which everyone benefits, and I named it Aqaid al-Shia, the beliefs of the Shia, which later became Aqaid al-Imamiyya. My intent by the Imami Shia is specifically the Twelvers Ithna Ashariya, so that it is not understood that the intent is other than the Imami, such as the Ismailis, the Zaydis, and others. Good. And its dictation was in the year 1363, meaning about 81 years ago. 80, yes, 81 years ago, out of the motive of delivering them as periodic lectures in the College of the Religious Publishing Forum to benefit from them as a preparatory step for advanced theological Kalami research. So he sees that this book is an introduction, a useful introduction. And at the time, I had succeeded in delivering many of them, and I had not prepared them at that time as a published and read book. So they were neglected in scattered papers, as is the case with many of the lectures and lessons that I dictated in those circumstances, especially regarding beliefs and the science of Kalam. Of course, later on, many of his papers were gathered. Perhaps he has a book, or a book was gathered entitled Papers from Sheikh al-Muzaffar. Many of his efforts remain papers. Praise be to Allah, this book reached us. Of course, speaking of something, it is nice that one of those who wrote in the translation of Sheikh al-Muzaffar, Sayyid Amar Abu Rakif, titled the book around it, Muhammad Rida al-Muzaffar, a text that was not completed, or yes, a text that was not completed, because many of his efforts were lost and not completed. In any case, however, in this year, and after 8 years had passed since it, the noble man of letters, Muhammad Kazim al-Kutubi, of course, al-Kutubi is the profession of the bookstore owner. May Allah, the Most High, protect him, desire to reconsider it and gather its authorship into a concise treatise connected in links. This is an indication of that the book was placed for the purpose of teaching methodology, connected links. There is a connection between the parts of the book for the purpose of publishing it and generalizing the benefit from it, and to ward off many of the slanders that were attached to the Imami, especially since some contemporary writers in Egypt. This is the specificity we mentioned. Openness, that when he wrote this book, one eye was on the Shiite interior and one eye was on the outside. He means a specific writer whom he will mention by name. In Egypt, yes, he will mention him by name and he will mention him with disapproval too. That some contemporary writers in Egypt and elsewhere still continue to carry out harsh campaigns with their pens against the Shiites and their beliefs, out of ignorance or feigned ignorance of the method of the Ahl al-Bayt in their religious paths. Of course, at that time, in the early 20th century, it was the peak of the literary movement in Egypt. We are talking about the golden generation of writers at that time, and most of them wrote in history, in jurisprudence, in beliefs, and most of them touched upon the Shiites, starting from their senior Taha Hussein, Muhammad Abdu before. We are talking about the early 19th century, Muhammad Abdu in the late 19th century, Taha Hussein, and others touched upon history and touched upon the Shiites. He sees that all of these approach Shiism with ignorance. His expression said, and thus they have combined wronging the truth and spreading ignorance among the readers of their books, calling for dividing the word of Muslims. This is an indication of what? His unifying rapprochement personality and stirring up grudges in their souls and malice in their hearts, nay, instigating some of them against each other, and no expert is ignorant of the extent of the need today, especially for rapprochement between the various Muslim groups and burying grudges if we cannot unite their ranks and gather them under a single goal. I say this, and I am a poet feeling, alas, that we cannot do anything painful with these attempts, with those whom we tried from among these writers. The man was in contact with them, such as Dr. Ahmad Amin. The problem of Najaf was with Ahmad Amin in the first place, the author of the book Fajr al-Islam, The Dawn of Islam, Duha al-Islam, The Forenoon of Islam, 3 books. Fajr al-Islam in particular, meaning he slandered the Shiites a lot, and his likes from the callers to disunity. So the clarification of the Imami beliefs only increased their obstinacy, and alerting them to their error only increased their disputation. Of course, Sheikh al-Muzaffar met with Ahmad Amin. The literary figures of Egypt visited Najaf and met with its Maraji's sources of emulation, and there is a well-known meeting and a well-known dialogue at the time of Sheikh al-Muzaffar between Ahmad Amin and the great Shiite Marja and Shiite leader at that time, Muhammad Hussein Kashif al-Gitta. He reproached Ahmad Amin with a severe reproach for what he wrote about the Shiites. Ahmad Amin said to him, I did not have Shiite sources, therefore I wrote this thing. He said, an excuse worse than a sin. If you are going to write about the Shiites and you don't have sources, why do you write? And he told him, now look in all the libraries of Najaf. You will find all the Sunni sources present. And he clarified the matter to him. And he asked and inquired. When he returned, he did not apologize. Rather, he kept promoting the exact same lies. and he means this incident. And he also met with Sheikh al-Muzaffar regarding a matter that exists, the matter of Ahmad Amin's meeting, and his dialogue with Muhammad Hussein Kashif al-Gita, which is present in the book Al-Firdaus al-Ala, Paradise the Highest, compiled for some of the issues of Muhammad Hussein Kashif al-Gita. In the introduction, the dialogue was mentioned in full, and I mentioned it. I had a dialogue with an Al-Azhar Sheikh in the book, Ajwibat al-Masail Azariya, Answers to Al-Azhar Questions. I mentioned the dialogue in full as a warning to them because they still fall into the same error. In any case, its name is Al-Firdaus al-Allah by Muhammad Hussein Kashif al-Gita, or Janat al-Mawa. I also mentioned the issue, and what matters to us from these and others is that they continue in their obstinacy, insisting, except for the fear that the negligent might be deceived by them. So those fabrications delude them, and those attacks embroil them in stirring up grudges and rancor. And whatever the case may be, the summary of his purpose from writing this book, I, in presenting this treatise to the youth Fay generation, hope that it contains what benefits the seeker of the truth. So I will have contributed to a useful Islamic service. I repeat and reiterate, the purpose of this great human being is purely rapprochement, nay, a general human service. So I placed it in an introduction and chapters. And from him, the exalted alone, I seek help for success. This is the first introduction to the book. It has a short introduction, 2, in which he clarified these matters. Very short. He said, 10 years have passed since the issuance of this booklet. A booklet, meaning it is concise. He is referring to this virtue. And I have not found in these years what caused me to change my opinion about it, that it came in accordance with the requirements of general need, clarifying the beliefs of the Imami Shiites to the other, and establishing Fay, confirming them among the Shiites, a view toward both parties. Rather, I found what encourages me to agree to republish it once more, hoping that it has hit the target and served the purpose of the attempt to lift the overcast clouds that have blocked for a long time, or rather which blocked for a long time between the two major Islamic sects, AHL as Sunnah and the Shia, and the attempt to blow off the dust left by the distant past upon the correct Islamic beliefs. And I am confident that the idea of rapprochement between the schools of thought has become today an urgent need and a lofty goal for every Muslim jealous of Islam, whatever his sectarian leanings and his opinion on creedal remnants. Here he points to an important issue. Even if it is between the lines that rapprochement and unity among Muslims does not mean abandoning sectarian specificities. This is one thing, and that is another thing. And of course, at the end of the book, he has a discussion entitled Our Belief in Islamic Unity. And there is nothing better in rapprochement than having the people of every creed themselves uncover its buried treasures and truths. And this method, as I believe, is safer in giving the correct idea about the school of thought and closer to understanding the right than the view adopted by its group, until he mentioned, and in response to the desire of the apple of the eye of the worker in the path of Allah, the noble Sayyid Muqtada al-Kashmiri. I have reconsidered this treatise and introduced some revisions and additions to it. Of course, the revisions in the footnote. The old editions have some commentaries in the footnote from Sheikh al-Muzaffar, usually written from him, may his secret be sanctified. This came in the second edition and thereafter. Of course, the book was printed, perhaps we are talking about tens, if not hundreds of editions. Perhaps I have the second or third edition in my library, which was permitted by the time crowded with problems, along with correcting what occurred in the first edition of typographical and non-typographical errors, to present it once more to the printing press, hoping from Allah, the Exalted, that He achieves the intended purpose in it, and that He guides us to seek the path of righteousness and hit the truth. He is the best one responsible, as he mentioned in the first introduction. He began with an introduction and chapters. The introduction is the miscellaneous matters in which he mentioned what is related to the issue of the obligation of contemplation and ijtihad in the roots, in beliefs, and the obligation of taqlid imitation in the branches. And this is what we will discuss in the coming lesson. And may Allah send prayers upon Muhammad and his family. O Allah, send prayers.